6 minutes left. Still, both sides could win this.
Absolutely perfect. Das Bauwolf kommt rein, 2 MGs, Peekaboo, Cribabble. Es ist ein Gemetzel.
Look at the carnage! My goodness!
Hello, welcome, and thank you for joining me, your host, here in the HCA Hell Let Loose Competitive Association virtual studio for this fantastic Week 2 coverage of a great game that we've got coming up for you between 38 Infantry Division and 82 Armour Division. Very much looking forward to this one. Those of you who are familiar with these teams know that they've both been around for a really, really long time. But if you want a little bit more information, please, you can type the command, !82 AD, I'm just trying to remember how I've written them down, and !38. I don't think there's a period, but there might be a full stop after that. But if you write those, you'll get an explanation in the chat of the two teams here. And what a great game it should be coming up for us today. We're over on Utah Beach, which is always an interesting map. Depending on the middle point, it can kind of go either way in terms of balance, but relatively balanced map, so giving both teams a good chance here to show us what they've got as they get their campaigns underway at the early stages of the HCA in preparation for a lot of the other leagues and tournaments coming up throughout the season. So yeah, really, really good one for us today, I hope. First of all, before we get started, let me just say thank you, as always, to the organisers of the HCA. So that's Stevens, that's Misfiring System, Ghosty, Gadarian for all of the amazing production work and for creating this virtual studio and all of the stingers and the transitions and everything that you'll see this evening. Also to Ruri, Velo, anyone else I missed. And of course, thank you to Das Altberg for that awesome trailer that we get to see updated every week. And you'll notice it's not just updated on a weekly basis, but it's actually updated for the specific teams that are playing this evening, so massive thank you and respect to Das Altberg for that one. Thanks as well to everybody who has followed and subscribed since last time. I won't go through everybody because it's a bit of shameless self-promotion at the start. We'll kind of not dwell on it, but just safe to say thank you very much. Hopefully everything is all kind of going correctly as far as the stream is concerned. I know last week we had some problems. I'm not quite sure what was actually behind that, something to do with software updates maybe, but hopefully it's sorted now and the stream is at decent quality. But we are on a 30-minute delay, so if there are any problems, there could be an issue where we don't find them for 30 minutes. Fingers crossed it's all right, but these things do happen in a live environment, and you know, if we were live they'd be easy to fix straight away because we could notice them and get them fixed ASAP, but unfortunately there might be up to half an hour before we can kind of even find out that something's wrong, and then some more time maybe to fix it. So you know, apologies in advance if anything goes wrong, but fingers crossed everything's okay. We've got a little bit over 20 minutes before the start of the game, so what we're going to do is just have a quick look at the map over here on Utah Beach. So here we go, over to our virtual strat sketch area. And you can see that we are going to be following the 38 Infantry Division admin cam tonight. So if we highlight players, or if you see the tags over their heads, they'll be highlighted in blue. And 82 AD is going to be highlighted in red. They should basically I don't know if we're going to highlight them, but they should show up with like the little things over their head. And we'll just get started by talking about these middle points. Now, those of you who've watched lots of How Let Loose competitive, you'll be very familiar with Utah Beach. It's a very popular map, and both these teams are familiar on it. Although there has been a slightly different record between the two teams on this map. The red team this evening, the Allies, 82 AD, they have been fairly successful or more successful on this map as opposed to 38 AD, 38 Infantry Division. I'm going to get my numbers mixed up. A bit of, what do they call it? Dysnomnia? That's not correct. But yeah, forgive me when I get my numbers mixed up consistently throughout the evening. I will obviously try my hardest not to. But 38 Infantry Division have really struggled on Utah Beach. In the last 3 games they've lost versus a 6-3 kind of record to wins and loses for 82 AD. In terms of like which side is kind of more powerful on this map, the Allies, in my opinion, have some quite strong advantages. Although obviously the Axis, especially now from this latest update, are probably considered throughout the game to be the stronger side. They have the Panther tank now, which is their kind of fast-moving heavy tank, which I'm sure we'll see deployed throughout the game by 38 Infantry Division. They also have Panzerschrecks, and we've seen some of the other teams use those to great effect by to take out their artillery of the other team, and they've got some pretty good guns there as well, some decent loadouts on their infantry, so quite balanced hopefully, but it does somewhat depend on the point. And if we start off with WM4 up at the top here, so I'll just get that sector highlighted for you in green here, if I can see the lines on my own screen. You can see that WM4 is firmly within F column, making it closer to the Allied lines, and the Allies have a pretty straightforward route to get up to the point. They can kind of just take these roads, or alternatively the open fields, into the back of the point here, and there's a way through over on this side of the map. Although actually I think it's kind of more here, but you can get through and you can drive the trucks through the barbed wire, so you only need to worry about getting through the gap if you're actually on foot. But they don't have to stick to these roads, which will probably be getting artilleried from the very start, I would imagine, by the Germans. So they do have some routes that are kind of covered, a bit more variable, so harder to hit those early artillery shots on their transport trucks, meaning that not only can they get there quicker because it's closer, but they also have a decent chance of escaping destruction on their way in. For the Germans, it's definitely a little bit more difficult. Their best bet is to get over to Sunken Bridge, put up a garrison, perhaps not as far up as that, but somewhere around Sunken Bridge, and also one further down in D column, maybe in D5 or even C5 back here, or over on this side by the stream, although that's a bit more open, so something back here might be a bit more common. And they want to get themselves kind of pushed up as best they can up to these hedgerows here, and kind of push on all fronts. We'll probably see a Lux come out if WM4 is the first point. That Lux light tank for the Germans, very, very powerful against artillery, and spawning early in the game at the top spawn, could be used quite effectively to push through this 3 line and take out some of these infantry as they start to pour into the back, inevitably for the Allies, who, as I say, will get there first. So further to cover, more open ground here for the Germans to cover too, especially on this kind of final approach that they have up to the barbed wire. And then in terms of routes into the barbed wire, they obviously can drive their truck through as well, but it's going to definitely be harder for them because they'll be driving that truck straight into an onslaught of enemy fire, very likely, and artillery. So they do need to kind of find the ways in through the barbed wire. There's kind of one over here. You can get through on the road. You can also get through on the other side of the street, but it's incredibly open. And there is a way through the side here as well. I'll just clear up the map, and then we'll kind of talk about the important area other than the actual hard cap inside WM4 for both teams is going to be this farm building down here in F5 or F4, just a series of farm buildings that are really vital for area control of this point, also for the chapel that we'll get onto in a minute, but obviously allows the Germans to kind of push this side to get their reinforcements coming in this side as well to back them up and allow them to do a decent push, you know, especially if there's like a front line been established by them over here, and vice versa. It's really important for the Allies, for exactly the same reasons, to push out of WN4, get to here, and then they can stop any kind of German advances this way and just hold that front line. Using the advantage of having the barbed wire, having their tanks pulled up, you know, having extra sort of routes into the back here for infantry, and having their garrison nice and covered, very close to the point as well, where we can see up here in G3. So vitally important area of the map, those farm buildings there, and not just for this point, as I said, also for the chapel as well. It's very kind of well known that the chapel again sort of favours the Allies in terms of getting there first. You can see again, if I highlight the sector here, that it is very, very much closer for the Allies. But the big difference with the chapel for the Germans, we'll get on to in a minute, is that actually there are 3 whole squares that are also in the sector, as opposed to this one where, yeah, okay, there's kind of 3 squares in the sector, but one of them's like halfway inside the base, and the other 2 are very, very open. We'll have a look at these in a moment and talk about that. But again, in terms of the approach, the Allies definitely with the easier time straight off the bat, especially if it's Hill 5, they can get something set up there and push people all the way down into Chapel, and then moving out and, of course, trying to capture these buildings as well, although it is a trade-off with the Chapel, because whilst these buildings are vital place to hold to stop any kind of German advance or German advances down the road this way, they are outside of the sector. So whether it's Germans or American soldiers, they won't be providing capture power on the Chapel, or defensive power, you know, depending on who's holding it. So there is a bit of a calculation that needs to be done there, and a bit of a trade-off. So if they can, especially for the Allies, if they can hold the Germans back into these areas, so the Germans are mainly kind of trying to filter in and dying in this area of F4, kind of where the farm buildings are, then any Americans standing in here will be providing defensive power on the Chapel, and none of the Germans here will be providing any kind of capture power at all. So that can be a powerful strat, although it is risky to allow the Germans into that area, because they can set up and stage quite a strong attack from there. The other side, of course, is pushing the road, and even in the setup, trying to get up to the Chapel. I've drawn the line down to the bottom of the Chapel, but realistically the Germans are going to want to get on this side of the stream up here on the north, because this is a very open area below, and any kind of approaches that way, they have lots of runs across open territory to get to the Chapel hardpoint itself, and they'll get gunned down very easily. Whereas coming around on this other side, not only does it allow them to get round to this farm building and then onto the road, of course, push down the road, flank around, etc., but it's a much more covered way into the Chapel hardpoint itself, and especially when you're getting backed up by artillery, as they almost certainly will be, at least at the start of the game. It can be really powerful. The other thing is this approach that I've just drawn from the south here. All of these buildings in this area, and even the fields out back here, because they're all within the sector, any Germans who are in this area will be providing capture power. And it's quite a small hard cap. If you compare it to the size of the hard cap here at WN4, for example, it's really relatively small. And so what we find often is that despite having a lot of players around here, the Allies do struggle if there's a large kind of like an amassed German force in this area, because just through sheer numbers you can kind of overpower the additional capping power that being inside the hard cap provides for the Allies, which is pretty much 3 to 1. So every person inside the black circle is worth 3 versus everybody outside just being worth 1. Because it's so small, because they really only have cover within the church inside of it, it is possible to start to capture Chapel, although when the reinforce goes out it often changes things, but it is possible to start the cap at least on Chapel for the Germans just by holding that area there. Going down to WN7 before we kind of try and get into the game in a moment, we'll just highlight the sector again. Do this, and you can kind of see in a similar way there is the possibility for the Germans to kind of line up specifically in E8 and E7, kind of done boxes now, but that's fine. Over in these areas and amass some, some capture power in the sector. However, that being said, you can see that the circle here at WN7, the hard cap, is a lot bigger, and that does make things slightly different, because a large number of troops can fit inside this circle, can be very close to it and run in, can place spawns in the back gardens and these kind of areas and move in quite quickly. Although there will be heavy artillery throughout. We'll have a little chat about artillery in a moment. But in terms of this point here at WN7, the critical areas, there's a house down here, so the Allies are going to want to kind of push up and probably drive in the back of the point through the barbed wire this way, but also push up and take these houses. They call it Grandma's Cottage, I think, over here in F7, and that kind of guards against any incursions, particularly from the Germans, through this way, through this kind of T, this cross that you can see on the map here. This little these trenches. That's what that sort of symbol indicates. Trenches that move right into the back of WN7, and this is a very kind of known route of approach for the Germans, and so guarding that house is vitally important. Once the game gets underway, the Allies, if they're trying to recap or whatever, trying to push people back through F8 and get them in the back of the point that way is going to be exceptionally difficult, and it's something we saw What the Hell struggle with a lot in the spring seasonal when they came to play on this point, and they really, really need to capture that area again to get people in the back here, because okay, they've got this advantage when it starts out, when the game's fresh, but when it, if they've been capped on and they're trying to recapture it here, the Allies, this just isn't going to work, and they're going to need to go in through the top there. For the Germans, they are going to want to get nice and close, probably put garrison here, maybe even one out on this corner to begin with, because you can't build them inside the two neutral columns. But they're going to want to push down into WN7, probably get tanks looking down the road here, but almost certainly get people in down this way across the field over here as well, and of course try and get round, as we said, to that Grandma's Cottage and in the back, because so much of the time with this game it's all about area control. If you can push your enemies out of the sector, you don't even really need to be inside the hard cap. If you've got garrisons in the right place, people in the right place, then they can hold the enemies in a position where they can't provide any kind of capture power, and themselves are out of position, depending on where the secondary points are. We won't go through all the secondary points here this evening, but safe to say that, again, they are somewhat in favour, a lot of them, of the Allies to begin with, like for Hill 5, for example, very easy for the Allies to get to. AA battery, very easy again for the Allies to get to, but depending on the middle points, especially if you get these diagonal pushes like WN4 to Hill 5 or Chapel to AA battery or WN7 to Hill 5, it opens the map up a lot. It's quite a big map. It's good for tanking. There's lots of open fields at the back. You see lots of tank flank arounds, and how the tanks play in this will be exceptionally important. The other thing, of course, is artillery. And we've seen the meta for artillery kind of change and go through some progressions over the last few months. It used to kind of be that we had recons, so sniper squads basically going, who can place their spawn points much further back into enemy territory. They were spawning in, they were attacking and harassing those people on artillery. Then the artillery team would leave behind all sorts of things to stop them from getting sniped, so building walls in the way or abandoning vehicles, and then they would leave other vehicles behind, like a recon tank or something to defend the artillery. But then there started being this whole kind of meta change a few months ago, where teams were using their practice servers to find and the admin cam facilities to kind of find these places where they could slot shells through, and they would spend hours and hours and hours finding a place where they could place a tank that had shots on the enemy artillery, and kind of use that. And then there were counter shots being designed, so they'd watch, one team would watch the stream of a previous team's game and see where their tank was, and then they'd spend themselves hours on their own server placing AT guns to try and devise a sort of counter snipe on the enemy tank. Now that is still very much a thing, but we're also seeing Panzer Shreks, especially for the Germans, because they have that big arc when you fire them, like a long range and a big kind of parabola that they arc around in, allowing you to sort of shoot them up in the air and curl them down onto a target. We're seeing that be deployed a lot more on the enemy artillery, especially for the Germans, as I say, but that's largely because it saves them from having a tank tied up. They don't need to worry about counter snipes so much, because if they have 2 or 3 spots, they can just run people into those spots and get the shots out, especially then using the supply drop, or the ammunition drop, excuse me. That's a new ability from this update to kind of constantly resupply their rocket people in these particular areas, and that's obviously keeping that kind of pressure on without using munitions and things like that that you'd be might be using for restocking your tank and things like that. Then there's also this change where recon squads, the squad leader has the ability to fire a flare, and what we've started to see is that the flares are being used much more offensively than as a defensive tool, or they're not. The recon squad leaders aren't hanging around the artillery anymore, because they've got this amazing ability to mark enemies on the map. And they can keep those flares coming as long as they keep resupplied. Again, with that ammo drop ability, they can keep resupplied. The commander doesn't have to waste resources on recon planes. They can just have these squad leaders spawning in constantly, firing flares, either redeploying or resupplying, firing more flares, and lighting up the map and showing basically most of the way through the game, really, where enemy players are, and that's really, really powerful. And we've seen that be used to great effect just recently as something that the teams are kind of adapting to. So not sure where these two teams are in terms of their sort of strategy when it comes to dealing with artillery, but it's certainly something that we're going to look out for, and certainly be looking out for how they kind of utilize those new abilities, whether it's the ammo drop from the commander abilities, whether it's, are they using a lot of recon planes, or are they using these flares to kind of be their recon, and thereby saving munitions for either the artillery or for bombing run, or the new precision strike as well, which is kind of an air strike that's very, very effective against tanks, and we've seen used to great effect. People were kind of wondering, because it's quite expensive in resources. I think several people I spoke to were wondering how useful it would be really at the competitive level, because it costs a lot. Hopefully you'd have other ways of taking out tanks, but it's like a one hit on tanks, and especially if they're parked next to each other. If you've got that flare in the sky and you see 2 tanks sitting next to each other, having the munitions there, having the thing off of cooldown is really valuable, because all of a sudden you can change the flow of a game massively by taking out several vehicles at once just in one hit. And there is a chance to hear the planes coming, but it's not that easy for the teams to kind of counteract. So really be looking out for all of these things throughout the game. We won't be having people highlighted too much. It's something that, if you watch my other casts on Squad Line Battle, for example, I have everybody highlighted so we can really see what's going on. But one of the HCA kind of production rules is that we won't have people highlighted, but we're certainly trying to keep an eye out on the maps to see where the tanks are, see what's going on in terms of any AT guns built way back in strange areas, kind of thing, that seem like, well, what are they shooting at? But it should be a really good one here today. And 38, they have it all to do, really. They've lost previously to 82 AD on this map, I believe. They did win against them back in July on Samara Glees, so it is possible for them to win here, but 82 AD probably the favourites. 82 AD, of course, have been in Hell Let Loose forever. I mean, both these teams have been in Hell Let Loose pretty much forever. 38 kind of on the German side, 82 AD like right back from the Kickstarter days with the full European kind of team, and they 82 AD have played amazingly at times. They've kind of come and gone. They've come back. They had a good full seasonal when they played with DC in the end of 2021, but then they kind of never made it to the playoffs, unfortunately, in the spring seasonal when they were playing solo or just a 82 AD team in the spring seasonal just gone, losing out to 116 just before getting through to the playoffs. So they want to push forward, and they got some legends on their team. They've got some real great history as a team, and they want to push forward and make sure that they are remaining competitive. And they had you know, they didn't have the best start to this HCA. They lost against 116 last week, unfortunately for them, and you know, 38 haven't even played yet in HCA. That it was their bye week last week, so both the teams going to want, you know, whether it's 82 AD coming off the back of a loss to a team that they have a history of losses against, unfortunately, or whether it's 38 who are looking to come out with a win straight off the bat. Both of them really got something to prove here, and should be a great game. I'm starting to see that the server is filling up with both teams now, so we'll kind of go into the pre-game screen. I'll get everything set up and make sure that we're good to go as soon as the server flips. So bear with us, and we'll be getting started, well, hopefully very soon. Okay, it looks like we're all set up, ready to go in just a second. But do make sure that you, you know, before we get started, let me just give a shout out, and do make sure you go over and watch some of the other games here that are playing either concurrently or have played already. We've already had ESPT, who are playing kind of solo in this competition versus DC Raptors, which is really great to see those two teams playing. Really interesting matchup. That was over on Carentan. That's already played out. I won't tell you who won, but check out Gadarian. Massive shout out to Gadarian and Lapinu, who are streaming that one. Lapinu doing so in French. The Evo and Core match, unfortunately, Evo had to forfeit. I'm not sure whether that's like a timing issue, and I know this has been a problem with Asian teams in the past. It's really pretty unfortunate that Core weren't able to, adapt to a time that was capable of the Evo were capable of playing, because it's kind of like a free win if you just say that you can't make it. So it's a bit sad to see that, and I'd really hope that some of the Asian teams don't get kind of done dirty in that way, although it has to be said that there is a problem with kind of timing, and it definitely can be an issue for people. So I just hope that we don't see too much of this, is the point, in the tournament, because we saw quite a bit at, unfortunately, really important times as well, back in the spring seasonal. We've also had Chimera versus 20th Panzer Group and 10th Mounted Division. That was over on Samer Église. Check out Noppers, I think it's Noppers or Nopers, and Quicknix, who's streaming in, I want to say Dutch for that one. And then we have G13 and Sesh in the minors as well, over on Purple Heart Lane. Pepper casting that one, doing a dual cast like we've got this evening with both the maps and everything. Check out Pepper. Gadarian's kind of, I don't want to say even trained him up, because I think they learned together, but they're both like on a level at this point, and Pepper, really great watch. Talk about another great watch. Check out Mr. Nitro, who was casting Merciless versus OPBHB, the Outpost Bale Hay Boys over on Foy, which again, I'm not going to spoil any of these, but that should be a good match, I would think. And Captain Salsa Golf, if you want to watch it in Spanish. Excuse me for having to read the names here. Then Alpha versus IR as well on Samurai Dumont, with Richard Walter, who's streaming that over on Billy B. That is in Chinese, Mandarin, I think. But go check that out, have a look at the clips. There's the coverage there. Whether or not you understand exactly what's happening, obviously that's down to you. But just to say, go over and check those out, and all the other games that are playing concurrently. All the information for all of those games can be found on the Discord for HCA, so make sure you shoot over there and check it out. We're going to jump into this game now, and I can tell you that it's WN7 as the middle point. We'll get up in the sky, get the other camera going for the other map, and we'll get right into the game here and have a look at the team's warm-ups. Here we go. Oh, got a problem with the game capture. There we go. We're on. Not sure what was going on there, but I had my heart in my mouth for a second, but here we are with WN7 as the middle point down here in E and F8. That means that these 4 squares here, including E and F7, are the sector required to put capping power or defensive power eventually onto this middle point. Then we've got some of these, one of these diagonals that we talked about before with Le Grand Creek being quite a difficult one here for the Germans, and paired up with WN5 for the Allies over in red here, and that's kind of an easier setup, of course, for the Allies being kind of one behind each other. It makes it easier to sort of stack your people and like push them in to a point all together. However, if you get really pushed hard off WN7 and if you've already lost your garrison back here or something, then it's a real long run across this very open beach for the Allies, whatever happens, to get back to their second point. It doesn't matter where it is. But WN5, obviously, not being like in the middle, and it doesn't have as easy a route up as Hill 5 into Chapel or something, if those were the 2 points back to back to back. We'll get the other map up here and show you what's going on there. You can see that we've got the German map, so this is 38 and 82 AD here on the right with the Allied map. And the Allies already preparing just one player in this light tank, and I wonder if that's going to be setting up some kind of attack on the artillery that we talked about before. I'll just get us up in the air so we don't have to deal with the sound here of all the vehicles moving. But we've also got some other interesting tank moves. You can see that they're kind of bringing up another light tank, the Allies here, that's a Stuart in I-9, to help the push as they're going to drive directly into the back of Win 7. I suspect we'll see them come here in F8 through this kind of spot that we talked about before, through the barbed wire, and just drive those trucks in if they can. They've already got some people jumping on the artillery as well, so they'll be looking to drop shells on this road back here. And the commander here, Jem, an absolute legend of Hell Let Loose, driving the support truck straight up the middle. I don't see any markers because we're not squad leader, unfortunately, on either team, so we don't get to see those except who's in our squad. But on the other side, we've got some players up in a Lux at the top, as well as another Lux, and it looks like a Panzer IV down here pushing for the Germans, and they're just trying to get their players in with these troop transport trucks, push them into WN7. So let's get back into the game here. I'll press my wrong button. There we go. That's what we want to see, not my ugly mug. Okay, so let's sort ourselves out. I'm completely in the wrong place here. Here's WN7. And there's that artillery dropping. That is the German artillery dropping around Granny's house, which is this area here. We won't do any pings because obviously I'm in somebody's squad right now, but that is that sort of Granny's house that we talked about, just kind of out here by the road in F7. And here we can see both teams getting there relatively evenly. The Germans managing to get themselves through that barbed wire quickly and actually take out the transport truck of the Allies. The Allies sort of marginally ahead here, but it is contested. Good stuff here from the German rocket players. Oh, they lost a lot there though, and the Allies now kind of using that advantage to push in, although this is really damaging artillery, and we can see this Lux coming in. They know exactly where the Allies are going to be running in from, which is that trench area. We talked about that T of trenches back there, and already I can see on the map here we've got flares up for both teams actually. If we have a little look here, we had a flare. You can just see the stuff fading away over here in E6 for the Germans, and for the Allies, recon plane as well, but the Allies have fired their flare over here in E8, and that's obviously highlighted quite a few people. Get my keys right this time, and we're not going back to the studio, just straight back to the action. And WN7 very heavily contested here. It's quite unusual not to see the Allies start to capture this a lot sooner, but they are now just about. Combat Wombat does have an OP down inside the point here though for the Germans, and that's really important because it's just waylaying the Allies a little bit, and this Lux, with suicidal disregard for their own well-being. We've got Phipps, Chillers and Patrie absolutely slapping the Allies here, but they get hit twice. Kolstad and Popcorn both getting hits on the side. Somehow they're not destroyed here though, but that'll finish them off as Kolstad gets the kill for 82 AD on the Lux, and that's going to allow those Allies to really filter into the point. But the damage is done here for the Germans, I think, with Terminator and General inside the farmhouse here. Relatively safe from artillery, relatively safe from infantry as well. We can see this is the Allied Lux below us, taking a position right on the edge of the map. And I do want to go and have a little look at the other Allied, did I call it a Lux? A Stuart. The other Allied Stuart, which, as you can see looking at their map, is over here in I3, and that could be the one to watch for our artillery snipes. We'll go check in a minute. At the moment it seems like quite a lot of artillery is still falling. I presume that means the German artillery is still in play because it's kind of falling in those areas that would be important for German artillery. Looking at the German map here, they've still got this Panzer IV just in below us. You can kind of see set up here, looking sideways through the bushes, and that's quite that's a play that we've seen sort of come into development, as far as I know, from Trigger and some of the other Asian teams, kind of putting the gun sideways and driving up and down, sort of peeking in turns through those holes. But the Germans, they're in it for the long haul here, with 38 lining themselves up all along this road. And again, it's that game of playing for area control, playing the whole sector, not just the capture point, because all of these players that they've got here, House Squad, P Squad, although they just died, Nagat, Golf I think's in there as well, they are all kind of swarming in this road area, and that is going to be providing them capture power. Welcome everybody. I think people are starting to like come into the stream now. Obviously, if there's any problems, let me know. It's half an hour delay, so I'll try and fix it. I've tried to watch it a little bit on my end here, but there is a lot going on to try and cover. So let me know if anything's wrong. Hopefully it's better this week. But those Germans doing a good job of spreading themselves right out. And that's a hit on a Stuart over here, and another one. It's not down yet. The tanks are really tanking these hits. They're not going to survive that, surely. Oh my god, with the ricochet. They're living a charmed life over in the Stuart as they pull in behind the bushes. But it's going to stop them from being able to lay down too much high explosive fire on the Germans in these buildings. But the Germans do need to do something with their position here. And they're going to want to be moving where Rambo and Stated, E-Venom, all are pushing for the Allies. And only Bayonet here to the left of our screen to stop them. Let's kind of catch up with the player here. And actually, they're going to run past each other as Rambo runs over the corpse of one of the 38 players. Bayonet's going to see Fingers out in the field, I suspect. Oh, heard the gunshots behind, but wasn't sure. Going to get shot in the back, maybe by Stated. Yep, looks like it, although... Or Stayed, excuse me. But Stayed running out of ammo. Nice kill, Bayonet kits on one. Fingers with his back turned. And here comes that Stuart again. You can see all of the Allies swarming around this area. That's the Granny's house that we talked about that runs into the trenches at the back of the point. Still artillery going strong for the Germans, it looks like, on WN7. So we'll go and check out the artillery guns. There they are. Ah, look, it's our commander here for the Allies, Gem. Really fantastic player. Been playing Hell Let Loose competitive at the highest level for ages, simply ages, right since the beginning. I remember watching some great games back in 2020, and you can see here all of these Belgian gates, I guess, in an attempt to stop the rockets from hitting them. And it looks at the moment like they're not under too much explosive pressure, although Gem gets 3 kills on the 3 artillery players. It's going to really struggle to get in and around through this barbed wire, though, as Quinay spawns in. I can hear this might be a bombing run. Yes, this is a bombing run. We'll get over to WN7 to try and catch that as it falls into the back of the point here. Just straight over Granny's house. And actually, not too many Allies there. Looking at their map, they don't have a garrison around there. It's actually further back, so the garrison is untouched by the bombing run. OPs don't get destroyed by a bombing run. I kind of want to go and check this tank, though. I don't know if it's still over there. It looks like maybe it's not. Starlord, 82 AD now. If that's the same Starlord that was in What the Hell for Simply Ages, like a founding member of What the Hell. Can't see it over there. Maybe we'll go and have another check in a minute. It looks on the Allied map like it's kind of moved and it might be falling back. But again, the Allies, you can see here, with use of their flare, but they're also using the recon plane, which is really interesting. They're trying to get absolute maximum information about the map here. And for the moment, it's working. We've got 1:18 left in the game. They've got some pretty decent area control, as we can see, of Grandma's house, which is the sort of important area to hold, and of WN7 Hardcap itself, filtering through into the road and trying to get themselves set up in a bit of a front line ahead of the point. Obviously, they've got this kind of diagonal run to get to Le Grand Creek, and that's partly why the Germans have amassed so many players between WN7 and Le Grand Creek to stop them from just being able to run straight into the point. We'll keep an eye out for the flanks going on from the Allies, because they do have something occurring over in C4. They've kind of been marked, it looks like here. Blue 6 has put down a light vehicle marker. Oh no, this is Combat Wombat's put down a light vehicle marker, excuse me, but Blue 6 may well have put down an infantry marker we can't see because we're not in a squad leader position. Unfortunately, we don't get that information from up here. But this green flare is a Allied flare. Let me check my colours. Highlighting Zaran Sofa, NSL, and a couple others in the ditch. For Mannering, stayed Thorpe, who's one of the absolute top killers in Hell Let Loose. Jinx of the commentator, allowing them to try and get on a flank and push through into Le Grand Creek. Good kills from Fluggewehr. Excuse me for saying everybody's names wrong, by the way. Getting machine gun shots off of the top of the glider. Nice little spot there. But for now, 1 hour 16 remains, and the flank is kind of on. You can see the OP over in D5 getting destroyed there, but still a decent control of the point at WN7. They just need to make sure that they do remain in defence here, 82 AD. Don't get too carried away on the attack too soon, send too many people forward, but they're wrapping around. They're doing a good job here of getting shots on the Panzer. In fact, that might be a Panther. That is a Panther. So this is one of the kind of new tanks for the update. Let's get in there and get everything unhighlighted for you. Falling back here to try and make sure they don't get destroyed. But decent stuff here from the Germans out on this D8, E8 line to kind of hold off this 82 AD encirclement, because once they start getting attacked from north and south over there at Le Grand Creek, it's going to get really, really difficult for them. Decent stuff here though from 82 AD, it has to be said, with good area control all around the sector, keeping at least the front line at bay, if not pushing through in some areas. You can see Major Mouse Spearhead, Pisic over here. I'm sure I'm saying that wrong as well, my apologies. Kind of pushing through below us, and that's on this road that you can see here in E5, but also flanking around kind of okay on Le Grand Creek at the moment. There's not too many of them over there. Cannon Fodder is really the kind of only squad leader in that area, as the Lux has driven through and killed a few of them. But looking at the Allied map, you can see they do have 2 OPs around the back, and they probably will be looking to form up some more people over there once they get their encirclement a little bit round. They'll be looking to get round to sort of drown fields, set themselves up for Saint-Marie approach. They'll obviously be going for the 5-0 eventually. That's their plan. You know, you've got to be ambitious, got to be in it to win it, as they say. And so they're going to want to set up down the bottom here, get some encirclement going, get their players into this ditch that you can see, and the sort of trench and the road next to it, into the fields. That was the glider that we saw the shots off on their northern flank, but they're going to want to flank from both sides, hopefully get some people through here as well, from the east into Le Grand Creek, but then set themselves up for Saint-Marie approach in the end. At the moment it's not going too well for them, but at the same time, as long as 82 AD can keep some of these 38 players back. That's just a few players that they don't have to deal with either in the front line. As you can see, they're getting thinned out here. The blue dots are, you know, very much fewer than they were a moment ago. We've got O squad all the way over here in E4, which is kind of way out of any position that's providing capture power, you know, but forcing them out over there is really important for 82AD. The same with Queen squad way out here. You know, Dog and Gold squad have both been pushed back to ED line. The commander's sort of been reduced to using some strafing run action here on the garrison that's hot in D5, and that's kind of often a sign of some desperation, trying to keep people off the garrison. Obviously, the allies have seen it now. Spearhead running straight towards it. Scope 2000 is in the ditch, might get some shots out. Ghost Recon could really be helping to support, but Spearhead doesn't need it and gets the kill on Scope anyway. Mannering was always going to be running back and taking those shots too. Mannering probably looking to keep firing those flares over Le Grand Cric. Flugabwehr with more shots off of the glider with the machine gun, kind of cutting off that push through the field, but it doesn't matter because Spearhead and Ghost Recon are able to run through the ditch here. Here comes the Lux. They're not happy. The Lux literally driving down the ditch. Might take out House Squad's OP. And they do now have a garrison here as well. You can see it just here. This is the 82AD, the allied garrison. Saren Sofa dying to Mannering over there, and the push still being somewhat effective, at least, as we said before, at least getting German players out of that critical area around the road, allowing Remba, Jimmy, Pisijik, Froggers all to kind of move up into those areas, move out into the fields past the road, get that area control. They need to be careful to hold their line and not push too far and allow the Germans in through Grandma's house, which is still getting shots on. I'm going to go and check for some arty sniping action because where is it? I can hear it. It's below us somewhere. So we've got a heavy tank sitting by the garrison here. They're not shooting at the artillery, they're firing at tanks. But, where are we? I heard it just a second ago. Because I can't ping or anything, it's really hard to see with no highlighting. Oh, it's literally there on top of the bunker. So they've got an AT gun and sound bust here, which I'm guessing, I don't know if we can see the shot line here. That looked like it might be this explosion over here, but might be shooting straight at the enemy artillery. We're kind of going straight towards it, as you can see, yep, and there's one of those shots hitting, and I think it's going to hit those Belgian gates. We'll just sit here for a moment and check. And if it is, that's really good defense here from 38, because it's stopping them from getting exploded. Ooh, that was pretty close though, my god. So yeah, that is the strategy here for 82AD. Get that Stuart to fire off the bunker, destroy these guys off the artillery, but at the moment it's just not working. And because they don't have recon players back there anymore, you can't often tell whether it's working. I guess that's why Gem came previously for 82AD to check what they had in terms of defense around those artillery guns. We can see on the other side here, Raven and Pony both under some attack as well, it looked like, from explosives. Both built some barricades around themselves. We'll just wait and see if there was another explosion. Yes, and that is a Panzer Shrek, I believe, coming down at that angle there. Where's our guy? Maybe it's... Yep. There she blows. Okay, so down here, just on the road, we're now looking here in E and F3, kind of down by these supplies, and you can see actually that's exactly what we talked about before in terms of putting down munitions. They don't have an ammo drop crate there at the moment. Maybe that's kind of not their meta, but they're certainly having people kind of spawn in over and over, because I'm doubting he got shot just then. But we'll jump over to Le Grand Cric and check that out. But it looks like for the moment the artillery's kind of working for both teams, but maybe more so for 38, although it's not really helping them here, as a whole bunch of American players, the 82 AD USA team, are kind of running into the point at Le Grand Creek, and the Stewart was in the hard cap there as well for a second. Now it's got two people in there with Klicker and Klaus both in the Stewart, and what that means is that they've got kind of an armoured shell protecting two people who are each have ×3 capping power. I was trying to think of the word, like three times capping power inside the hard cap, which is really important. Makes them way harder to kill. It's very, very powerful, and 82 AD doing a good job of pushing here from the north. And actually, I think maybe 38 got a bit distracted down here in the south in E7, because they're trying to stop this push from getting through, and at the moment they're succeeding. If we look at both maps together, you can see that there's not really anything going on for the Allies on that Saint-Marie approach road at the moment, and despite identifying these two tanks, they haven't managed to kind of get through. But it's not really mattering at the moment in terms of capping Le Grand Creek, and if they can just get that and then push out and secure especially this area here on C line, BC line, then that could be really important for them. We won't kind of dilly-dally here, as we might be going to lose Le Grand Creek, or 38 lose Le Grand Creek and 82 AD gain it in just a second. I think the reinforce was out when we just looked at the map then. You'll obviously correct me if I'm mistaken, but 1 hour 6 remaining, and we've got a win here on Le Grand Creek. See if I can... Boom. Do my 82 AD boom. Just in time for the counter-attack to arrive. 38 doing a good job of getting back now, but might be too little too late, and they need to be careful that it doesn't draw them out of those important areas, because there's still a whole bunch of 82 AD players. We can see here in E column, all amassed around here. They've used their precision strike to try and take out those tanks they identified a moment ago, and they're going to be pushing Saint-Marie approach very, very soon. So they need to obviously leave enough people to defend this against a counter-attack. They need to use everything at their disposal in terms of commander abilities, you know, like the reinforce and things like that, to try and keep it. But we've got to be so careful here if you're 38, because you've got 82 AD players pushing right up into your home turf. That Saint-Marie approach over there, you can see it wouldn't render a second ago, but really just one tank between 82 AD and that point. Although 38 doing a pretty decent job of actually recapping over here at Grand Creek. And you can see they've killed an awful lot of the Allies, the USA players who were inside the point, and that's allowing Kling and whoever's in this recon tank to get in there. This is another Allied flare that we can see in green below us. But 1 hour 4 remaining, and I'm about to have to do another boom. This counter-attack pretty successful, although again it might flip back the other way, as I'm seeing a whole ton of these red berries moving in from the south and the north here, and they might not even make it. We'll give them a boom because they have captured it. Good stuff on the counter-attack there from 38, and that's at least buying them a bit of time to get themselves sorted out down the bottom around Saint-Marie approach. Which is really important. They didn't have that kind of defensive mentality before, but it's bought them a bit of time there, and that's good stuff from them. Although, looking again at both maps together, you can see just how many infantry 82, I'm like literally getting myself mixed up again. 82 AD, the Allies, the right-hand map, you can see how many players they have around Le Grand Creek. There's a whole ton of infantry there, and despite quite a few tanks in the area here for the Germans, we've got a heavy, we've got a medium, we've got a recon tank as well. despite all of that presence around the point, you can actually see one of them just going down there on the main screen. I think that was the recon tank. And the heavy here, the Panther, getting lit up with Thorpe firing rockets. As I said before, Thorpe, an excellent gun player. Great strats as well, really good game awareness and knowledge. Always understands where tanks are going to be coming from, and a fantastic AT player. But gets absolutely annihilated by the Panther here on Le Grand Creek. 38 are holding it for now, and there are certainly a lot more blueberries around than there were just a minute ago. It's contested for just a second here at Le Grand Creek, and they need to get their bodies into the point. They need to secure those areas around, and actually you can see that they've almost had to kind of forsake this E7, E8 crossroadsy area because they needed to get people up here to the north to defend. But what that means again is that it's just going to allow 82 AD, as we can see here, to push into those really risky areas. And if they get another cap over there on Le Grand Creek, as they are just at the moment, then they're in a really dangerous position here to make that final push over onto Saint-Marie approach. And with their tanks out here on the edge of the map, that puts them in a really, really strong place. 2 heavy sitting down there just waiting to go, as we see a whole bunch of their red berries swarming the point here at Le Grand Creek. I'm pretty sure as soon as they capture it, if they do capture it, which they are at the moment, still just about, as soon as they capture it, we'll see them push in that southern area. And that's where having that stuff set up around Saint-Marie approach is really important. But will it be enough? A couple of OPs in C8, Queen OP over here in B7. This garrison, quite a long way to run back to Saint-Marie approach, but decent enough to get to the stream. Whether or not it's in the open, it's hard to say from looking at the map. But if they can take back Le Grand Creek here, 38 don't need to worry too much about that, and could take advantage of that southern push themselves. Although if we look at the map for the Allies here, you can actually see that they've done a great job down the bottom of keeping their tanks, keeping a lot of people either very close to or just inside this blue sector. And that's what we said before about capture power and area control. And look at these garrison placements. They've got one in a really, really secure area to feed people into WN7. They've got one further out to indicate any pushes or flanks coming in around here to Granny's house. They've got another one further back of Granny's house, so it can't get destroyed by a bombing run, and will allow them to push people in to take out any flanks that are going on there. They've also got one right down on the bottom of the map on the edge to help them with that southerly push. You know, it's a long run across an open field here from the south, but at the same time, you know there's no enemies behind you or to your left, so you can kind of keep looking in a certain direction. And then you can see how many people they're trying to push forward and get into this ditch, so that when they recapture Le Grand Creek, they can just close that net around Saint-Marie approach. And if we look at both maps together, you can see that from that position they've got pretty good sightline down here to where we can see in C7 the garrison. They've got this clear push straight to Saint-Marie approach with their tanks, and that great area control all up and around WN7 and even into Le Grand Creek as well, even with a garrison up here in E4 to massively help them to get through the point, push through it and get that area secured so they can push the south. I hear the Lux firing now. We'll jump back into the action, and I see the shells going off below us. These are not my pings, I assure you. The only pings that you'll be able to see are, of course, other people in my squad. So that's Combat Wombat squad here for 38, and the commander, Ark. Unfortunately, it's kind of not meta at the moment for the casters to be able to see all the markers, to be able to kind of show you what the teams are thinking. Hopefully at some point the devs add that as a function to the admin cam so we don't have to take up a squad leader position. That's the ideal situation, because there's only 20 squad leader positions available per team in the game, so they covered them fiercely. On one, just with a miss on the Lux, but maybe it's enough to make them turn away from the point. And he didn't miss the second time. Ghost Recon as well with the AT gun moving in, and that's all of the tanks around Le Grand Creek taken care of here. The Germans in a difficult position again, 38 on the back foot. Grand Creek being capped again by 82 AD, and you can see as soon as they get into that point they're looking to clear it out, and then they're looking to push through, whether they're coming from the south at the bottom of the screen now and pushing through to the north, clearing out the middle and pushing through to the north, or whether they're coming in as they were before from the north and clearing out everybody and pushing to the south. They just don't want to be standing in that open area where they can be so easily artilleried. Although at the moment only one artillery gun in action for 38. And this is where it could all go wrong for 38, as General Mannering, DO6, Vice Cop all push in to Le Grand Creek. Securing that point again for 82 AD, and now we're on Saint-Marie approach, and you can see Combat Wombat, Scope, who's that, Hans, the other squad leader, all having to spawn back here at the HQ, and already Cobra Tiger, sorry, and Popcorn getting shots off on them. Combat Wombat maybe in a big firefight now, but gets the trade, which is important. Might just allow another spawn wave in, but Popcorn's already there at Saint-Marie approach, and look how open this whole area to the south is. 82 AD could even be more aggressive than what they are right now, to be honest. 55 minutes left in the game, and they're already in a 4-1 for the second time. Possibly the third, I'm losing track at this stage. But with a clear run up the road all the way into the enemy's last point here at Saint-Marie approach. And for 38, this is not the position they wanted to get themselves into. And they've played well here, you know, like they had the good area control right off the bat above WN7. They were looking to push WN7 in the right places. They had people back at Le Grand Creek. They used tanks in defence. They've been firing those flares off. They've had people firing Panzerschrecks at the enemy artillery to try and take them out. Whether that's been entirely successful or not, I'm not sure, as we can see that Felix and Glittergale here, or Gleitgale, in Love Squad are actually back there as recons. You know, they've tried all the tricks in the book here, but unfortunately they had a bit of a nasty setup here with the diagonal, which kind of didn't go in their favour. But 82 AD have pushed them back excellently, and they're finding themselves here, 38, right back at Saint-Marie approach, and having to basically start everything again from the rear. We can see as we follow this trench along to Le Grand Creek that really 82 AD have the point properly now. There's no kind of immediate counter-attack on the horizon. And 38 having to push people up the ditch, and they really need to consolidate themselves and get that into an effective defensive push, because otherwise they're going to get whittled down, as we're seeing here, getting picked off one by one, kind of piecemeal by 82 AD as they advance through the ditch, which of course leads right into the point here at Saint-Marie approach. And so very, very dangerous to allow them to get anywhere close. And if we jump over to the Allied map, you can see that they're gradually, slowly but surely, moving those OPs up the path of that ditch, up that stream, and getting themselves closer and closer. We've got Romeo Squad, we've got Golf Squad, really, really close here in C8, looking to put a lot of pressure on Saint-Marie approach. We've still got, is it Mannering over here, or somebody firing Who's this here? No, we've got some recon squad leader firing flares as well for the Allies. You know, for defensive purposes. They're not worried about the north so much. They're just looking to seal the deal and push her into Samari approach. You can see those garrisons really coming into play. They've got some fantastic spawns coming up here, and now a garrison at the Drowned Fields kind of area. Or, that's not Drowned Fields. Wait, that's Drowned Fields. That's Flooded House, I think. I'm getting confused, but down the bottom of the map, basically, in D8. And looking at the action here, we've got Neil dying on the point for 82 AD, but on the point, getting that soft cap going along with Popcorn, as Capital, Cobra Tiger both moving up. I'd be very surprised if we don't see a big tank push here in a minute as the infantry start to catch up for the Allies. Looking at the German map here, though, they are determined to stay in it as they move their heavy tank into C5, along with a coordinated sort of front line action. We've got them spreading all up and down C column, as well as Easy Squad over here with Whizball and Gauss's squad, Howe squad, waiting for these supplies to drop to the north of Le Grand Creek. Although they've probably been seen, if we look at both maps together, we can actually see that, who's this here? Star-Lord over here has probably seen those falling down, and we don't see the markers, but probably will in a minute. Look how many players are pushing into Samari approach here. You know, and it's great stuff from 38 to be so concerned still with the attack, but as you can see from their OPs heating up, it's really turning into a defensive situation for them, first and foremost. Let's get back into it, and you can see that so many red berries now pushing into the point at Samari approach. And for the Germans, they do have a garrison back here in B8, which is vitally important, because as soon as 82 AD start to capture that sector, because it's an HQ sector, that blocks any Germans from being able to spawn back at the HQ spawn, and they've even got kind of a backup over here in A7 as well, just in case this one gets taken out. And we might see some sort of bombing run or something in a minute. That sound that you can hear is not a bombing run, but it is the 82 AD recon plane flying over the back of the point, and it's going to almost certainly identify a whole bunch of these 38 players who are spawning in, and it might signal to Gem that it's time to drop that bombing run. I don't think we've seen a bombing run from 82 AD yet just now. Looks like they've lost some nodes, so maybe they are struggling a little bit for resources over on 82 AD, and it looks like they've lost their northern nodes, and so they can't follow that up with a bombing run. Interesting that they would use the recon plane rather than flares on that kind of immediate attack, but they have now. I don't want to leave this because they're starting to cap the final point, but they've actually identified these tanks here that are pushing them as well. And Panther getting a shot in the side from Astra, but probably going to get shot from all around actually. Oh, here comes. Wait, whose bombing run is this? This is a defensive bombing run here from the Germans. And that's the German airhead we can see falling on the parachute there as well. They know it's coming down to the wire. 49 minutes left. They're almost halfway capped on here at their last point. 82 AD putting on a clinic though. They pushed all the way through. Used this ditch to full effect. And I believe that airhead is going to fall straight into enemy hands as Capital runs over to it. This is what we were talking about before, seeing their tanks move into the south and get a tank push going on this point, and it could spell the end of what was otherwise looking like a fairly hopeful game for 38, and it's very unfortunate for them, but great stuff from 82 AD and a really high level game from both teams, showing they both deserve to be here in the majors, utilising all of those high level tactics. We saw really great arty gameplay, we've seen strong tanking from both teams, really fantastic tactics, as I can just see the Germans are contesting Le Grand Creek right now, as they're mere seconds away from losing their final point. They're entering a cap race, but it won't be enough, certainly if they can't stop this attack. And right now, it's looking like 3-1 inside San Maria approach. And I reckon we could almost call it there. And there it is, guys. What a great win for 82 AD. Let's have a quick look at the scores. Do make sure to go and check out the Discord as well. Let's get rid of this overlay. Check out the Discord for the sort of more updated stats, and there might be something in the weekly recapping that I do with Known Connection at the end of this week, talking about some of the stats. But we'll scroll through. Do pause the stream to check people's scores. We'll just wait till after this. No spoilers, please. I know it's like half an hour. People will come in the chat. If I put the emote only, that's a spoiler in of itself. So hopefully everybody's just going to be nice and not put any spoilers. Okay, so do pause when you see people who are important, but really good stuff here from 38 on the left there for the Axis. But 82 AD coming very, very strong here. Some great combat effectiveness as they start to leave. Hopefully we'll be able to like scroll through before everybody leaves, but really nice stuff from them. Great tanking from both sides. Not posting huge scores, but really good at supporting the infantry, both in attack and defence. Lovely to see from both teams there, to be honest with you. And a really great game, I think. Kind of a little bit short, or certainly shorter than 38 would have liked. But a decent game. You know, they set out well. They knew what they kind of wanted to do, but it just didn't quite happen for them this time out. Hopefully we can get on our pre-game screen here if the thing catches up with us. There we go, and then we will get back to the studio. And it just really remains for me to say thank you so much for watching. Thank you for all the players, obviously giving us a great game, both teams for participating. Thanks again to HCA for putting on this amazing tournament, and both leagues, and putting in all that effort. You know, I've talked about Stevens before, Ghosty, we've talked about Gadarian, Misfiring System, all these people. Make sure you share the love with them. Go check out the other streamers who are streaming games at the moment, because, you know, there's a whole ton of them on at the moment, sort of starting 7 p.m. UK time, 7:30 p.m. So still going on concurrently with this one. Go check them out. And if you've missed any of the coverage, you can just hop on over to the Discord. I need to say the seasonal Discord there, but the HCA Discord, and you can find actually all of the information that about where the games are. They'll be recorded as VODs. This one will be recorded as a VOD as well for 2 weeks. Eventually, by then, hopefully I've remembered my YouTube login and I can save it on my YouTube account as well. Either that, or we'll be starting a new YouTube. At this point, it's getting desperate. But yeah, thanks for joining me well, that was a pretty good game, wasn't it? Fairly exciting. Really high-level gameplay and strategy and tactics from both teams there, but 82 with a great win. Yeah, thank you very much for joining me, and I look forward to seeing you again soon for another episode, another week of HCA amazing gameplay. Do check out myself and Known Connection as well. It's over on Known Connection's stream this week, but for the recapping on Friday, where we're going to cover all of the games throughout the week, and, you know, give you the results. So if you missed any, come check that out. It's always a fun time. We'll kind of go through all the results and watch some clips as well from all the different streams. So thank you again, and catch you soon, guys. Goodbye.